Hello everyone, hope you're well. I thought I'd do a Tuesday video for once, just because I was in the mood for it really. I'm in the process of getting Final Fantasy VIII on the Switch, and I thought, you know what, I've been messing around in my head with doing a Final Fantasy kind of ramble for a while, and I'm a massive fan of the games, have been since I was about 11 when I got Final Fantasy VII, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to talk through why I love the series, what I love about it, and kind of talk about my order, I guess. I mean, it's the first time I played a game that was massive. I mean, I'm gonna do a proper ranking because I think that's how these videos have to go. But I'm also gonna just riff a little bit about my first experience because for me it was 7, like it was a lot of people. I'm quite basic in that regard, and the reason it kind of blew me away was I remember getting that game, and I don't know, I should have known the fact it was on 3 discs that it meant it was going to be big, but I played that game for the first however many hours. Let's say I was 10 hours in, and I was still in you start in a city called Midgar, and I was just working my way through it. The whole plot was that this evil corporation had been draining the life stream, and that this band of eco warriors were planning on taking down the corporation, killing the president of the corporation and basically stopping them from ruining the planet. The whole story at this point was, companies are bad, let's stop them. And I remember thinking, this is all right, it's decent, it's fun, it's interesting, you're going on these missions. I didn't really get it. I spent far too much time faffing around trying to get everything right, running away from so many battles and things like that because I thought that they were going to be difficult and hard. And then I remember going through the building and doing it all with a fine-tooth comb and thinking that I was getting all the best weapons, and I'd read, or someone had told me, that one of the character's best weapons was in this building, and I remember spending an hour looking for it. And I now know that it's in that building at the end of the game, a good 40 hours in, but at this point I was I was less than 10 hours in, and I'm running up and down trying to find it and failing. And I remember going in, doing the bosses, thinking this is it. Like there's a famous scene where you're riding a bike out of Midgar and you're hacking at all the different soldiers that are coming at you to try and stop you. And I remember thinking it was just the end of the game, really enjoying the end, getting really like het up, this is it. And then leaving the boundaries of that city and seeing the world map open out and thinking, oh my God, I'm not even, like, where am I? What's going on? Still constantly thinking I was near the end. It took me ages to complete that game. And I mean, like, after what must have ended up being something stupid like 40 hours, and that's not even touching the sides really, got to the final boss. It took me 3.5 hours. I remember being woefully unprepared. I was level 30. I had, I think, the start of the battle, and I had none of the right stuff equipped, none of the good weapons equipped, none of the good magic, none of the good summons. And straight away, 2 of my characters were turned into frogs or toads, whatever it is they'd get turned into. So I was trying to revive them and stop them being toads and fix that problem. And I just managed to keep staying alive, resurrecting people. They'd die, I'd bring them back, they'd die, I'd get an attack in. And it was kind of going in this cycle constantly, just back and forth, attack, die, attack, die, attack, die, heal, heal, heal. After, honestly, it was a ridiculous several hour long grind. I remember calling my sister and I've completed it, all of this, and we watched the ending and being blown away by it all, and just feeling like everything had kind of changed for me from what I expected from games. And I spoke to my friends, and they were all like, we did that at level 68, 70, 80, whatever. It had taken them 10 minutes, if that. They'd managed to get to it in like 40 hours or whatever, and they were much higher. One of my friends had tried to master the game. He had like every magic leveled up to the maximum. I hadn't done any of the side bits, any of the weapons, as they're called, they're these giant monsters. I hadn't done any of the kind of special bits you're supposed to do. So I instantly put disc 1 in and started the game again. And I have played through that game so many times, it's ridiculous. At one point, I'd played it every single year since 1996 when I first played. About 1998, I must have first played. I don't think it was out in 96. I wasn't 11. I was in year 9 at school because I remember being on the year 9 playground. So I would have been whatever age that is, 11, 12, 13-ish. I played it every year since then, at least once. We met up when I was 18, 19, I had my own flat. Me and my mates met up and tried to play the game from start to finish. I crashed out, fell asleep after 24 hours. Not even that, I think. Two of my mates played it from start to finish without sleeping. We tried it again at another house, another time. I got a bit further that time, but I've never done it in one sitting. They have. I envy them for that. So this series, from that point alone, was already going to be a big player for me. But 7 isn't my top at all. I'll get to where it is, but it's not in my top. I've decided, over time. So I'm excited today because Final Fantasy 8 has come out as a remaster. It looks a bit weird. I've seen some videos on YouTube of it, and it does look a bit weird seeing it there because it hasn't aged fantastically well. They've updated the videos in between the scenes and stuff. They've updated the graphics, but it still looks a bit clunky. So I'm playing it on the Switch, so it shouldn't be too bad. But compared to like modern games, it's not going to be great. But I don't think that really matters because after I'd played 7, and in the gap before 8 came out, I think I got 6 on. I think it was actually 5 I got first on like one of my cousins had it on the SNES or something, and I played that. And those games are very different from 7. Like the ones very close to it went from like SNES graphics to PlayStation graphics, from 2D to 3D, and it kind of changed. It like blew things apart. But they were amazing stories and amazing games. I couldn't believe how much they fit on the cartridge. And then when 8 and so on came out, they were just getting more and more advanced every time. It felt like I was living in the future every time I played one of them. So I'm going to get on to kind of a proper ranking because that's the best bit of this sort of thing. Now, disclosure, I've only played demos of 11 and 14 because they're MMOs, and I've never wanted to pay money for an MMO because... I mean, look how addicted I am to Pokemon. Look how addicted I am to things like... I mean, Simpsons Tapped Out is a free, rubbish mobile phone game, but I spend too much time playing that day to day before bed or whatever. Pokemon Go's taken over my life. I don't think paying like a tenner a month or whatever to play Final Fantasy 11 or 14 and go into a proper living world with other people is the right thing for me. It would just consume me. I've always stayed away from World of Warcraft and all of that because it's just, I can't do it. I know it will ruin me. So they're at the bottom of my list just because I've not touched them and are dangerous. But the worst one I've played is, it doesn't really count, but it's Final Fantasy Type O, because it was just a weird, pointless, in-betweeny, why does this exist game, and it was just nonsense. It was just hack and slashy, and I'm not going to include the spin-offs to Final Fantasy 7 because I don't think they should count, but they were similarly hack and slashy, and I was like, that's not what a Final Fantasy game is for. And you're going to notice a bit of a pattern with this because after 10, they made the weird decision of removing the system used to be that you had your go, you did attack, it did the attack, the bad guy had their go, they attacked you. If you left it too long, they'd attack you between your attacks, but if you were better at like getting your speed up, you could attack again and again and again and again before they've had a go. Final Fantasy X perfected that because you could have a super fast character and he could just keep dominating attacks until they got looking. From 10 onwards, they've just had this really weird, you run around them, they want it all to be 3D actiony, and that is nonsense. So for me, O was the worst of the ones I played. I've still got it. I found it on a shelf because it's an Xbox One game, or at least I had it on Xbox One, and I must have given it a few hours and just thought this is trash, so I didn't play it. 13 and 13.2 were absolutely outrageous installments. I had the opposite problem with that one to 7, where I told a friend of mine I was about a quarter of the way through it, and he said, mate, you're at the end of the game. Like, you walk up the road from where you're standing and you get the final boss. I remember being really gutted, really annoyed, because I felt like there was no story to it. I found out why, because 13.2 came out like a year later, the other half of the damn game. I got that for free. Someone lent it to me, and well, they'd finished it and they said, yeah, you can have it. And it was rubbish. I played probably a third of it again, didn't like it, got rid of it. I mean, I say a third, it might have been the end of the game again, but it was terrible. Didn't look at it straight away, just get rid of it, sent it back to him. So they're not good, and that's a bad pattern because that's the second most recent one, and it was rubbish. It was too much activeness. You only got to control one character. You controlled the main person. You set the other people up, and they did whatever they wanted. And I don't understand why they made that a thing. That just seems like a really dumb tactic. What I really liked is being able to have my healer, my brute, my whatever, my black mage, my red mage, my blue mage, whatever it was I wanted, and I'd have them in my team, and that was all set up nicely. Being able to switch them out depending on the battle. 1 and 2 I put quite low on my list because they're very basic. Yes, they kicked it off, but they're very basic. The current official 3, not the original 3, was also similar. I found it a bit clunky. From 4 onwards, it started to feel like a proper game for me. For me, 4, I'm counting as... Because there's a weird convention where they started releasing them in Japan and in America with different numbers on. But the one with characters like Cecil, that's where I started really enjoying the series. I got to the final boss of that game, thought it was amazing. There's like however many, 8, 9 characters to it. I felt like that had a proper serious plot to it. It was really clever and good, really good fun. Never completed it, but it had the things I love, like having an awesome ship that you fly around in, having really cool parties with special things they could do, reasons to have them in your party, and little quirks and personalities and so forth that made them special. People can say that some of those characters are their favourite characters. You had like this, I can't remember their names, like Pim and Pom or something, a pair of twins that had different abilities. They were mages. You had Kane, the I can't remember what they're called, Lancer. He used to just have a move where he went up in the sky and he landed down the next go. So it was kind of just, if you knew that you were going to get a wave of a heavy attack, you'd send him up in the sky and everyone would die, and then he'd drop down and stab him in the head, and then you'd have him heal everyone quickly and then jump up in the sky. So it meant you could be quite tactical about it if you were rubbish at it like I was. I mean, better people would have just survived the hits, I imagine, because they'd have leveled up. 5 carried on that tradition of having a decent, solid story. I can't remember the characters' names in that, and again, I got to the end boss but never actually completed it, so I never saw the ending of 4 and 5, but I got really far in them, and they were really cool in terms of, they just felt like these massive epic fantasy stories, and they felt like they'd really hit their stride, and that was... I'm not going to go mad about this one. I consider it better than 4, but I feel like without 4 and 5, you wouldn't have got the absolute epic masterpiece that was 6. I'm trying to avoid going... I'm getting myself in a tiz here because that's not my next one on my list. My next one on my list, which these are 2 sad indictments of the series, 12 and 15. So again, you've got the 3 most recent ones haven't even made it into my top half. 12 was the first time they decided to let everyone run around. You could stand really far away and shoot arrows at a character, or you could go right up and start hacking at them. I didn't want any of that. I wanted them just standing in a line, attacking. But 12, I feel like I'm doing it an injustice, sorry. Like, when I put it in, I remember putting it in my PS2, and it felt like I was watching a film. It was amazing. I remember thinking this was the grandest thing, the biggest epic game I was ever going to play. It was enormous looking, and it's very serious, and it's very, they've built all these massive epic landscapes and all of this. But then once you kind of get into it, it doesn't feel like anyone's living in it. It doesn't feel like there's any heart to it. It doesn't feel like there's any jeopardy. You just feel like you're kind of watching this epic war play out, and you're a big part in that. But it kind of followed an issue that some of the other games have. If I remember rightly, and I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember feeling like a lot of the bigger villains in it just kind of came out of nowhere a bit, and it felt a little bit like, okay, I don't really know why I'm fighting you. There were genuine villains throughout the whole story that you kind of fought as you went along, but I remember just feeling a little bit like, whatever, okay, let's go. It just felt a little bit forced and a little bit off. So 12 isn't widely loved. It's been released a couple of times in different ways. They watered it down again in England and Europe and America for some reason, but it could have been better. I feel like this is where they started making weird decisions with them, and 15 carried that on because 15 had both the problems where you were running around all the villains and fighting them and hacking at them and doing your moves on the quick, but also the rest of your party were just attacking on their own. You didn't even get the kind of personalisation from 13. You were just letting them run riot, and you'd kind of given them weapons and stuff, and they just attacked. You were just their leader. 15 felt like a letdown in that regard. I enjoyed the story. I feel like it's better because I like the road trip of it all, but this is also, and a point I need to make actually, to where 12 kicked itself in the head, was after 9 they got rid of space, like airships that you flew around in, so you couldn't just fly around the world map. So in 12 you were just fast traveling around, and it was just like boring. In 15 they tried to bring some of that back by giving you a car to drive around in. I feel like the reason they did a car was because they had made such a hash of the game that it meant they couldn't let you just fly over places. It was very restricted. You had to kind of go where they'd made game, and they hadn't made the rest of the game in 15. So you were kind of limited to drive round the roads, wander into fields a bit, but there isn't much you can fly over because we've kind of ruined it. So yeah, they feel like they hemmed them right back. This is where like the likes of 5 come in for me, because in 5 you could fly around in an airship. 5 was awesome because you could fly around. The world felt quite big. You had the ability to fly around that bit, and you could go in water early on. They always used to have a pattern where you could move around quicker in the world, then you could go on water, then you could fly. They kind of killed that in the later bits. They got rid of their traditions that they had. So I then move into my best ones. Where how many have I got? I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left, and number 9 is my 5th favourite on the list, because that is the last time you could fly around a world in a ship and just kind of have fun looking at the amazing stuff they'd built. 9 had a fantastic story. It was the last one on the PlayStation 1, 4-disc epic. Characters were brilliant. It went for a cartoony medieval style. It was really special. It was a very special game. I got nothing wrong with number 9. The characters were lovable. I think the problem with me, the reason why it didn't quite get up, is you can't 100% it without some ridiculous dedication. You got to complete the game in 12 hours or something stupid to get all of the weapons available. It had a ridiculously hard ultimate boss that I could never do. I'd love to go back and do that at one point. I've always had in my head that I should go back and do the things in games I was never able to do to prove I can do them. So when I get 8 sorted, I want to kill the Omega weapon, because I never did that. But in this, it was Osmo or something like that. I couldn't kill it. 9 was a special game, and I remember feeling like it was just the right thing. I've tried to get Claire into it in the past. She's not got the time, but 9 was epic. 9 covered everything. It did everything I wanted a Final Fantasy game to do perfectly. 7 was my first. I'm putting 7 as my 4th on the list. It's my first game, but 7 is my number 4 favourite. I feel weird saying that because I feel like other games have gone up the list, but 7 was a special game. I covered why it was the first one. That had the High Wind. The High Wind is probably, it's up there as the second favourite airship I think that they ever had. It's definitely one of the coolest. 7 has amazing stuff to it. The Mega Ran soundtrack where he raps to the music from Final Fantasy 7 is fantastic. I listened to that in the car. It had all the best characters like that I can think of off the top of my head. Like all the characters are lovable. Epic story, epic villain. It's historic. I'm nervous about the fact they're remaking it and they're getting rid of the turn-based battles. They're basically doing running around nonsense hack and slash. So I feel like the remake is already doomed to fail. They're doing it in like multiple parts. They're changing the battle system. That game is doomed. I'm gonna get it, but I know I'm not gonna like it. 10 is my number 3. I'm counting 10-2 as part of that. Again, I don't feel like that was a cynical cash-in like 13. I don't feel like they made that and then cut it into 2 games. I do feel like that with 13. But 10 and 10-2 feel like 2 separate stories. And I feel like 10 got a 10-2 because it was so brilliant. It was properly epic. It is the first game that killed having an airship, and I won't forgive it for that because that's a big miss, and I feel really annoyed that that's kind of gone. All you got to do in that was you went up to your airship, you told them where to put you, and then you went there. You didn't fly around on your own. But I kind of get it. They were pushing the device, like the consoles, to their absolute limits. So it's like, okay, fair enough, I'll forgive you. That had so much to it. You also couldn't really 100% it without some luck. You had to be able to dodge like 100 or 1,000 lightning bolts. I can't remember how many it was in a row to get one of the best weapons for one of the characters. The characters in that were pretty cool as well, and it also had a really good mini game in I can't remember what it's called, the ball game, Blitzball. It had a great villain. It felt like it was a genuine, solid story, end to end. I remember getting that for the first time and just playing it for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. You know, I remember having a friend come round we unwrapped it, we put it in, we played it together. oh, that game was special, and it's definitely worthy of being in my top 3. But it's not as epic as 8. 8 is my number 2, which I feel like has the best ship, the Ragnarok. It's basically a dragon ship. It's fantastic. Goes into space. 8 has the coolest characters, although I feel like it's limited by what they can do. I feel like there's only a certain amount of viable characters to play it. I only ever play it with the same characters because Irvine with his gun doesn't seem viable to me. I think Selfie's too unreliable because special moves are unpredictable. I'm trying to think who else is in it now off the top of my head. I always play it with people like Squall, Quistis, Zell, and Renoa because their moves are more predictable, although Renoa's isn't even that predictable. I love the story to it. I'm well excited I'm about to play it again. I can't wait for it to download, and it is just a fantastic game. I love Triple Triad. The other games tried to have their own card versions or whatever in them, but this is the best side quest. I feel it was perfect, just laying cards down, matching up the right numbers and everything, the way it fit the world. I'd love to know what they cut out of that game for limitations. If they were really going to remake it instead of just remastering it, I'd love to see what else they could fit in, because there's whole areas, the whole continent at the bottom of that is empty, and I always wonder what they were going to do with it. I feel like there was time travel in it later in the game that may have come into play if they'd had more time and space, but I don't know. I'd love to know what their notes were for that. But 8 is my second favourite game of the entire series, which leads me to my first favourite. And I feel like I've talked about this on Mature Gamer Podcast enough times over the years, but Final Fantasy VI is the all-round, end-to-end best Final Fantasy game, bar none. Now, I would say 7, 8, 9, and 10, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 have all got epic soundtracks, absolutely fantastic soundtracks. They've all got superb characters. They've all got great stories. They've nearly all got great airships. But 6 is just that extra level of insanely good story, because I remember playing it and thinking, A, they fit all this on a cartridge on the SNES. That's insane. B, every character had a full story, like a full their story, their perspective. Most of the characters in every other game are kind of, they're there, they're angry, they have some scenes, they have some side quests, they've not got that much going on. Every character had a full-on, you could go and pursue this. One of the characters was a boy that had been left out in the wild, raised by animals, and you could go and you could like seek out his parents, find out what happened to him. You could spend hours getting him to learn every enemy's move in the game. You could have a character die midway through if you didn't know what to do, and if you died then that's it. But if you saved him, you could go and find out his past, who he was, his family. Other characters had different bits and pieces like that. Slight spoiler, midway through you basically lose, the world ends, and you have to kind of rebuild the characters. You basically build your party, play the game, the world ends, and then you got to go and rebuild your party again. There's characters that are complete background characters. If you don't pick them up, they're not integral, but if you get them, there's whole stories there for them. There's like a Yeti, a Moogle, a Mimic that you find inside a worm. It's just insane. The game is so good, and I feel like that's when they knew what they were going to make. That's when, after they'd done it 6 times, at that point they were old hat. They knew what they did, they knew how to do it well, and they smashed it out of the park. I feel like with 7, 8, and 9, and 10, they were kind of like, everyone's expecting epic, let's do it. We've really impressed the world with 6, let's make these awesome games with all this technology. I felt like they had the money and the skills and the patience to make these awesome games and push the technology at their disposal to their limit. And then they kind of just lost their way, because now every game they're like, look how many strands of hair we can put inside of a head. Look how many individual monsters we can make active on the screen at the same time. And they're not crafting this story end to end. They're not thinking about what people liked. They've got rid of the turn-based battles. I had a quick look to see if this was just a me thing, but if you type in why did they get rid of Final Fantasy's turn-based battles on Google, you've just got loads of very, very recent Reddit threads where they're all going nuts about the fact they've got rid of it in Final Fantasy VII, saying this series really went downhill after they got rid of that. It seems really weird that they've not twigged that that's it, because loads of other games do it. I mean, there was a list of current new JRPGs coming out that do it that way, and you think, what are they trying to achieve making it into these weird hack and slash games? It's not like God of War or something. It's Final Fantasy. Do it the way Final Fantasy should be. So yeah, I feel like I'm living in the past a little bit. I probably sound like the kind of person who would rant about how Pokemon was better at Gen 1 when that's not what I believe, but I know that I'm looking at it through nostalgia specs, but the more recent games have nowhere near lived up to the epic hype and game-changing ways the old games did. I think that's, even if I was just being nostalgic, I don't think there are that many people out there whose favourite games are Final Fantasy 15, 14, 13, 12. I just don't feel like those people exist in any great numbers. If that's you, I'd love to hear why. And whether they were your first ones or whether you haven't played the older ones or what. I'd just love to hear the justification, because I genuinely don't believe there are that many out there. I'd love to see, there must be a poll somewhere on the internet that I could look up and see what people think, because yeah, I just don't think, and no one's saying 15 is their favourite game, even aside from these ones. I think it's reasonable to say that anything 10 or before is your favourite all time at some point. But this game series was at a proper epic height when I was younger, and I feel like it's never lived up to that since. I'd love for them to do like Final Fantasy 16, and now they're going back to the active time battle thing where you take turns and it's all kind of flatter, and just churn out an amazing story, put the effort in it deserves. But I feel like they're not gonna. They're gonna put loads of effort into graphics and fancy stuff and weird pop songs midway through it, instead of, I mean, again, I say up to 10, they had just perfect soundtracks. They had genius, like, orchestral things going on. They did have songs in them, and those songs give me a bit of a nostalgia fix, but more lately, it was like Leona Lewis did Final Fantasy 13. It just seems like a mad decision. I'd love to work on these. I'd love to be involved in them somehow. I feel like that ship has sailed. I'll never be able to kind of work out a trajectory towards that, because I could become like a famous enough writer in 10 years' time that I got employed to work on Final Fantasy 19. That would be like the dream. Maybe that's what I should be doing. That should be my quest. But yeah, that's my lot, I think. So thank you for enjoying my my ramble. I'm slightly worried I've already done this. I don't think I have. If I already have, then I'm sorry. To be fair, if I already have, I doubt many people have watched it. Because let's face it. But I know I've talked about it on Mature Gamer in the past, and I think my list has changed. I think that before I would have said like 6, 8, 7 maybe. 6, 8, 7, 9, 10, I don't know. But I've basically gone 6, 8, 10, 7, 9, 5, 15, 12, 4, 3, 2, 1, 13, 0, 14 and 11. I'd like to hear other people's views on that, I think. If you haven't ever played them and you've got a Switch, Final Fantasy 8 is like, I think it's £15. I forget what I paid now, £15, around that. It's not a very big file. It should be downloaded now. I've been rambling for 20 minutes. It's probably a 30, 40 hour game, so it's a lot of time, but it's also available on PS4 and Xbox and PC, I believe. Double check that though. And yeah, it's just a cracking story. It'll look ancient now, but if you want to see proper ancient, then go and try and find Final Fantasy 6. I think that's on mobiles now even, but that's an epic as well. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Thanks for watching. If you'd like me to do more game rambling stuff, let me know. I just thought, I fancy doing a video. I want to do a video about it. I want to talk about Final Fantasy while I wait. I hope this has been entertaining. It felt like I went a little bit erratic because I wrote down my list while I was thinking about it, and then I got lost where I was. I think because I was talking about 1, 2, 3, and 4, I felt compelled to talk about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But that wasn't the way the list went. So sorry for the slight school-if way there. I'm going to wrap up anyway. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.